Hey everyone, welcome back to Mind Your Feed. I'm Jessica Harrison and I'm here today with Daniel Torres. Daniel, say hey to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
So, today we are going to, as promised, talk more about June being Men's Mental Health Month and kind of what is going on with men's mental health and a, through a perspective, a male's perspective, which will definitely help us sort that out. So, Daniel, I'm going to kind of just turn it over to you with one really broad question. And I know that you're not going to be able to answer this with one answer, but what is going on with men's mental health?
Well, I think over the last, let's say, 15 years, the advent of the social media revolution and smartphones and all of that, there's been a lot of dysregulation, I'll say, emotional dysregulation. There's been a lot of cultural play, political change, and a lot of focus on, let's say, the bad side or the worst side of men. And a lot of people don't really understand what men need, and even some men don't really know what they need. But the help really hasn't been there in the way it has been, I would say, traditionally, like it's been for women. So I think what we see a lot in the media has really just been a symptom of all of that.
Yeah. So you said the help hasn't been there, but I think that everyone would challenge you. It's like mental health is more available than ever before. And you can find help, get online. There are online platforms. You can go in for help. You can go through, somehow maybe like a spiritual or church services or something. But you're saying that's not true.
Yeah, I would say for men, there's been people who are already going to get help. That's great for them. That people who are going to do that.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of men, um, the the desire to go get help hasn't been really installed, I'll say, or trained into us since we were young. Especially, let's say, my generation. I'm 35. Um, Millennials were like the last generation before the age of media and connection to the whole world, where
So you're saying you didn't grow up with a smartphone in your hand?
that's right.
Interesting.
It's really I'm weird for that. Yeah, comparatively, right? So I think this whole generation, my generation, would be the last one, specifically, who are now kind of running things in the world. Millennials and the generation before them are kind of running society now, and men, let's say my generation, really didn't have an emphasis, or an emphasis wasn't put on their own health or mental health, their well-being culturally. And now that it's kind of available, yes, that's great, but it's not really directed toward your typical male who, let's say, everybody else would think, oh, well, that person would need help or some kind of um, intervention for them. Like and suicide rates, alcohol use, substance use in general, kind of speaks to that, of how addiction has actually gotten a lot worse. It's changed. Underage drinking has, pregnancy, all these things have changed. Right? There's dramatically, right? A lot less in that way. But for men, for adults, and I'd say even teen boys, depression rates they've skyrocketed in lots of ways. Kids are more, especially boys, are inside more. Talking, there's red pill movement. There's video game addiction. There's people joining their own little groups and secluding from society.
Yeah.
That has its own epidemic, and that's not changing soon.
Okay.
Over decades past, the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, culturally, there wasn't an internet or connection to the world like there is now. The closest thing was TV. And kind of harping on this social media aspect and gaming aspect, because that kind of is the culture. So that's just one aspect of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you mentioned a couple of things. Red pill movement, you said video games, and you said one other thing. What was that?
Red pill, video games.
I should have been writing this down.
All right. Well, we could do either one of those.
I think substance use.
Substance use.
Okay. So let's take each one of those apart, and I'm sure we're going to have a part 2, part 3, part 4, who knows how many, because there's a lot here to investigate. It's layered, like you said, right? So let's start with the most obvious thing, because I think this is the thing that gets the most backlash about what is happening to men is the red pill movement. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start there. Tell me what that is.
So
What does that mean? And who is it targeting? And is it really what it seems to be?
yeah, so I guess what it seems to be is a good way to start.
Yeah.
There are a lot of, we call men, young men usually, uh, people, men with kind of say have to be kind but accurate, uh, maybe incel vibes,
Okay.
right? Maybe people
What is an incel? Because
in
see, and not everybody's going to know this,
right,
and I think it's important because we're probably not talking to the group of people who would use the
right,
language incel. We know it because we have to know it for
yeah,
our job, but I don't know that if I wasn't in this position that I would know what that is.
right. So to put it bluntly, involuntarily celibate, right? So it's what other people or society traditionally would call men who can't get a girlfriend, men
Who aren't
really
having sex?
who aren't having sex. They're not successful either sexually or relationally with women.
Mhm.
And for a lot of men, and say most men, teenage boys, that's when they start. That's a huge deal. That's kind of one of the motivators of existence as you start out.
Oh, 100%.
So that's I mean that's the reality of it. So
So you would say that that kind of like fuels some insecurity.
100% fuels insecurity for men, and I mean it does all the way up until you retire.
Yeah.
For a lot of men, forgetting of having a girlfriend or getting a relationship, or just generally being attractive. um, all of those things are things men need uh, to feel validated in as some parts of society. Now the incel movement has been, okay, what are we going to do to what are we as a group going to be able to do to help each other get to um, get some status, and therefore
So achieve what they're trying to get.
right.
So try
So
to
it's
okay.
it's kind of like we see these celebrities like Andrew Tate or other guys who
Oh, there was that one. I can't think of that one. I just saw a new guy. I guess he's not new. I don't know his name. Just, but he was horrible. I mean, he's just
there's a lot of right.
saying the
So
most derogatory things.
well, because when I'll say men,
Because it's like objectifying and
right.
I don't know,
So when you
denigrating.
yes, so when well, the whole crux of this is if these boys can't get a girlfriend, get as in it's kind of objectifying term, but that's kind of what that is like when you're a teenage boy.
Yeah.
When you can't get a girlfriend or any kind of attraction or a date or anything, you become angry, right? And so that anger, you look for something. So usually you turn to degrading women, objectifying them, and like kind of treating them as a commodity,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of outwardly expressing your anger and turning them into the problem, as women being the problem, not your own inadequacies, and changing things about yourself. And if there are things to change about yourself, it's really shallow things.
Yeah.
And with those really shallow things, sometimes men have success, and those men become celebrities, and they become kind of the forefront of the movement of how to succeed as a man sexually.
Got it. And
Yeah.
so we have a bad training manual out right now.
Absolutely.
Is basically what you're telling me.
Yeah, and I think part of this red pill, so I'll say incels, right? In this red pill movement, why
is it called red pill?
Right. So, if you're familiar with the Matrix movie, there's a guy who comes to the main character named Neo, and he says, you can open. He has two hands, one with a blue pill and one with a red pill in it, and the one with the blue pill says you can go back to living the way life used to know it. Red pill is you're kind of awakened to how things actually are.
Mm-hmm.
And so he takes the red pill and he becomes awakened. And that's kind of the red pill movement, as hey, incels, this is how it really is, and this is how women really are.
Yeah.
And this is how you need to be in
Yeah.
order to be able to succeed.
Yeah.
And so that's attractive to a lot of men, because a lot of men, boys especially, or teenage boys and men in their early 20s now, they don't really have the same kind of guidance or heroes or philosophy. And at the other end of that is what we kind of talked about before. About
now, is that maybe how much of this has to do with instant gratification society? Because I kind of feel like s- younger generations have not learned the value of like working towards something
Yes.
and like the prolonged like pursuing
Mhm.
and pursuit of something versus like like, for a lack of a better way to say, I want it my way right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. So the delayed gratification part is important because sneaking into that red pill movement are a lot of men, young men and boys doing the same type of thing. A lot of video games, a lot of bad diet, a lot of things that are dopamine hits, a lot of
Yes.
things living that way.
Yeah, dopamine chasing.
Yes,
Would you
chasing.
right?
Yes, so
I
that's
would
chasing is a good term. So getting your fix in some kind of way.
yeah.
And so if they're not seeing the product uh, of their if they're not doing well right away
Yeah.
at the success, so they'll turn it against another group,
Yeah.
whatever that is, and
Yeah.
usually it's women,
Uh-huh.
or they definitely don't self-reflect to see what can I be doing continuously to see it in the long term, what I could be doing to be better as a man.
Yeah.
So again, this short-term gratification type of thing. So we'll see that the other thing I forgot to mention was porn. That's the huge one.
Right.
That's the one of the biggest
We're
ones.
gonna
Okay.
pause on that because I want to hit these three today. This that we talked about, so that we can but we're gonna come back and do porn.
Yeah.
But it's like we said, it's all layered. So we may have to. You may hear it sprinkled across multiple podcasts as we're like dissecting what's going on here and how to amplify men, how to train and get them prepared for what is coming in their life and how to allow them to know that they are valuable as well and a
Right.
huge part of society. So okay, so I'm hearing red pill, and I know what's going to happen is because we're so politically divided, everything becomes like, oh well, then that's definitely a Republican movement, or this is a
Sure.
Democrat movement, or those people are bad because this and this. And I don't know about you, but I'm going to say what I think, and then I'd love to hear from you. I actually don't think that this red pill movement is, people will say, oh my gosh, but is politically motivated. I think it's just trying to suck in as many people as it can. And for me, it's less political than it is, just kind of like coercion.
Sure. Yeah, I would say on the political end, there's not you can overlap things politically on either side for some of these things,
Yeah.
as far as like empowerment and whatever. But I think really it's just people taking advantage of young men, and it's
Yeah.
kind of it's just what the internet does.
Yeah.
Just like your algorithm will pop up with most of the stuff that you're going to see or absorb into. The algorithm is kind of changing society, and
Yeah.
whatever that is.
100%.
I don't personally engage in Facebook too much or Instagram. I have YouTube, but really, once you watch one or two videos, or even sometimes it's just adjacent, you can go down rabbit holes that could just change what your whole philosophy on life. Really,
100%. I literally have looked up something that was just very general, right? And the next time, close out of it, move on, don't think twice about it, get back into YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. And the next thing you're like, wow, what is happening? I could look up something about depression. And if I stayed on there long enough, 2, 3, 4 minutes, the next thing I'm going to be served is like funerals and these horrible stories about, people taking their lives or whatever it is. So yes, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, it's so, and you slip into a dark hole for sure. And it's really just about engagement. And usually who engages the most online is usually teen boys and young men. And so they get kind of redirected down certain paths with the most engagement. And that's kind of how this movement started, as far as it being online. And where most of this is just engagement.
Yeah. So, okay. So tell me how then red pill to video game connection, no connection really. What are we looking at? And how are we seeing this show up in like men's mental health?
So video games specifically, I mean, it's pretty much my generation who are now making the games, but we were the first like gamers, right? We had console gaming at home, where first it was you're sitting at home with your friends
Hmm.
and you're all playing together, and then
Yeah.
it got into the internet,
Yeah.
where now you could play with strangers, but now
Hmm.
um, we also have little boys, like 10-year-old boys, playing with grown men online.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, right. And so there's some boundary crossing there that didn't used to exist.
Yes.
Like you used to have to go to arcade if you're gonna stand next to somebody, like that was it, and you're in a public place or whatever.
Yes.
Now these kids are having conversations with other dudes. They're hearing and absorbing language, and I'm sure if any of you've heard grown men play any type of game, sport or video game, it's not for kids to hear
Yeah.
or be around. And so that exposure at an early age, it kind of they get kind of baptized into this
Yeah.
into this whole world.
Well, and I think what it gets very confusing very quickly, because this is my friend. We now, like, this young child has now befriended, believes
Mhm.
that this, whether they know age or not, 30, 40, 50-year-old man online who he plays with, because play feels like a friendly thing. And what we're seeing more and more often is the potential for grooming of
Mm,
those kids also.
right.
And so I think that that is, I don't know, I find that part of the video gaming is very scary.
Yeah, there's been a lot. So it used to be chat rooms, right? That was the
Mhm.
thing, chat rooms. And the other aspect of it is that kids now have cell phones, uh, internet access. There's apps, there's game apps where you can be social on these games, and you can talk to play other people across, and you can give out their information. And a lot of kids who don't know better are doing this. Like that's a thing. I'm a big believer that I don't think anybody until maybe they're driving should have a cell phone. That's me personally.
Yeah.
But especially with internet access. But those kids are now engaging with adults unlike ever before in history. Really, not even my generation was doing anything quite like that. There wasn't internet access or games to engage with, and that's, I think you were speaking to something earlier, like, oh, it sounds fun, right? It is kind of, play is usually fun. It is,
Mhm.
and it's in there's a guise of safety and fun
Yeah.
and play that children don't really tend to understand.
Yeah, that's where the parents set those boundaries. But if you're not hearing the conversations, if you're not understanding who they're interacting with, if you believe that you have done your due diligence and now you're just letting them play,
Right.
and you're not checking, because things are changing constantly, right?
Yeah.
Like, the roadblock that you're putting up today is not going to help you from the problem that is coming tomorrow.
Right.
Right. And I think that we think sometimes that we've done the protection piece and we're done now.
Right.
And it's a constant. You're constantly needing to protect.
Right. And this is that hypervigilance needs to exist for kids from adults,
Yeah.
to protect them from themselves, especially because a lot of adults will give their kid an iPad and say, here you go, and that's the babysitter, right?
Yeah.
And even TV has filters on it, where if you sat in front of the TV, they weren't going to have access to porn most of the time.
Yeah.
And even then, you could just turn off the TV and then it's gone. Now the kids have cell phones in restaurants. They have iPads in the car. There's no time when they're not exposed to adults on the internet. And so it's hard.
I think we're going out again. So
Yeah.
let's bring it
Yeah,
back
yeah.
in. Video games and mental health for men. I'll say, as a woman, and I'm so thankful for this, like, my husband has never played video games, but I have plenty of people who come in talking
Sure.
about the fact that um their husband gets home and they're on the video game from
Yeah.
then until late in the evening, time to go to bed.
Mhm.
The kids are doing the same thing because of the modeled behavior. And these video games are, not necessarily like G rated. So, how could that affect things on both ends? So, we're talking kids and video games, and then we're talking adult men video games.
So the modeling aspect of it, right? Kids are definitely watching the adults do, and that's anything you do, though.
Yeah.
Right. Anytime you have a child in the home, they're going to watch what the adults do and copy it. So whatever that adult's behaviors are, right? So if the let's say dad's coming home and just kind of neglecting everything, he eats, plays games, goes to bed. There's no relationship maybe with mom that there should be, or with the kids. They're not sitting around and at least watching a movie or a show or whatever together, talking. Then children will see that and say, "Oh, that's how things are supposed to be," and they would happily go to a video game or a screen and just kind of mimic that.
Mhm.
And that aspect of it is scary because I don't think too many adults understand how impressionable kids are and what they, the impression that they leave.
Yeah, so this is the detachment portion of
Sure.
that, right? So like to me, what happens and what I continuously hear is I'm so lonely, or I'm not getting the affection I need, or I'm not, but my behaviors are not necessarily promoting that either. If I go home and get on um my video game
Mhm.
and put on my gaming earphones and all the things
Sure.
that come with it, like I've totally detached from the human beings that are in my own home. And but yeah, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling isolated, I'm
Right.
feeling sad, I feel like I want more physical touch, and I'm not receiving those things because I'm not sewing into getting them.
Right. Yeah. And if your whole household is living in that way, there's just neglect essentially on all ends.
Yeah.
There's emotional neglect, and there's not a lot of reciprocity there, or even understanding that that's what's needed. Kids don't necessarily know what they need all the time. In fact, a lot of the time they have to be directed.
Yeah.
So they will seek it online, and sometimes from strangers,
Yeah.
sometimes from inappropriate sexual relationships before they even hit puberty.
Yeah.
There's lots of things like that because they're exposed.
Well, let's talk about the violence in the video games that the kids are kind of playing and how that can manifest. Well, first of all, we just as a statement, we are a take away the screens kind of people.
Sure.
Like, we do not think children are capable of managing screen time, number one. So if you're bargaining with them, we'll give you 3 hours if you will this, like, this is a losing situation and a losing strategy for you, because these things are highly addictive. For girls, it tends to be more social media, YouTube, those types of things. For boys, it's gaming and YouTube.
Mhm.
And they're highly addictive. They're made that way because the longer that they keep you on, the more money that they are making from advertising or from however it is that you are the commodity. You are the commodity. And so it's really important to recognize that. But let's talk about the violence and how that could be impacting mental health, because I see a lot of kids who are they can't focus at school, number one, struggling with that.
Mhm.
And kind of detached, just like don't have, sometimes like lack some empathy. And I find that when we're playing a lot of, like, what do they call that, shooter?
Call of Duty?
No, I guess that's what it's
First
called.
person
But
shooter?
first person shooter. You can tell I'm a big
Yeah.
gamer. First person shooter games, because like the value of life then becomes.
So just to let y'all know, I have played games. I was the gamer guy in his early 20s. Um, I wouldn't, not necessarily after growing up. I didn't really have too many video games.
Yeah.
So when I had the ability to purchase one, I was like, oh, cool, great.
Yeah.
And I play, and that was my way to connect to friends across state lines.
Mhm.
That's how I used it. And now when I play games, it's very few. I actually don't play video games. I try not to play in front of my kids. That's when they're already in bed. Like, I have my own situation. Me and the wife talked about it.
Yeah.
Like, it's a whole thing. And that's my time to talk to my friends, and that's that direction.
That's like your phone call.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. It's like, so we talk and we just hang out. We chat about the day. A lot of my friends, I'm from California, so I moved here. A lot of people moved away at different states too.
Yeah.
And that's my thing.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of been it. But I think what happens with, like, we were speaking to the violence and the disconnect that kids are having when they get to school, a lot of I would say, especially because they're so young doing these things, it's not like me picking up a shooter, you could call them shooters,
Okay.
picking up a shooter game and playing or whatever. And I get context and I know with the storyline, I know things, and I shouldn't do these things, right? When you have an 8-year-old who's really good at Call of Duty, that's troubling. That's troubling, because here's the thing. It's not only just that it's a violent game. It's because they have access to men shouting at them, calling them MF or SOB when they get shot and killed, right? That's their social interaction when they're playing. They're just getting called that. So they know that they can go kill that person and that makes them feel better. And so revenge, right? So now there's no, it's not a social thing in the same way that it is. They're playing with strangers. So you really get looped into this world where you shouldn't really be as a kid, especially on top of the dopamine chasing.
Capable of managing it and understanding like the dynamics. Yeah, too mature.
It really is a mature, like it's a mature thing to do. Just like if you go watch an R-rated movie, you don't bring a kid for lots of reasons.
Yeah.
It's not even just like, oh, they might see some sexual whatever, and that there's other contexts and situations that they might either try to go mimic because kids are naturally supposed to go mimic things. That's how they learn, or they're going to lack empathy because they've been showed no empathy when they feel bad. Something bad happens to them on the game. No one's there, right? And that's usually what we do, like with board games or with cards. We kind of sit here in a group and we're playing things like that. Or if you're at least standing next to somebody playing a game like it used to be, right? That doesn't exist as much anymore.
Yeah. And would you say that there's a potential for that to, for lack of a better word, bleed over into like, then what would be called socially appropriate relationships? So I go to school now after I've been playing 6 hours of Call of Duty, and I go to school the next day and I'm in a basketball game and I'm not winning, and I find myself throwing the ball at the person who, is winning, or being very frustrated or pushing or kind of talking smack or whatever,
So I think actually this reminds me of something like a comedian said this. I forget who it was, but the idea was back in the days. It was 10 years ago when texting was still like the thing that people were
and that's so nice.
Right, texting, right?
T9.
Just texting. Yeah, T9. They were T9ing like crazy. Unless you had the sidekick, then you were the cool kid.
Oh, you were rich.
Yeah, right. But like the concept was that kids are now, because you don't see the person in front of you, there's a disconnect for when you're talking trash to somebody or you're saying mean things in the community. Like, and now they send it, there's no like, oh, I saw their face when you're in person. You're like, oh, they didn't like that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a mean thing I said, right? There's a disconnect.
But that's what I was going to say. Whenever they experience that in person and see that someone is hurt by it, like, do you think that's more gratifying for them at that moment, instead of like where normally in a social situation that would say, Jessica, you need to back off. You've overstepped the line, like, and then you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. You have a little guilt, know. Instead, what I feel like we have been privy to is then like for them to go further,
right? Like,
let me just get the quote unquote, since we're talking first person shooter, the kill shot, like, but in an emotional way.
Yeah, sometimes. So a lot of this, especially if you're engaged in online social media constantly, it's about like winning.
Yes.
It really is like, oh, I owned them, or I won, right? It's about status.
Well, that's that male talk in general, right? Like, oh, we're crushing it. I killed them.
Right. Looking good. And in the perception of that. And so, but it's more degrading in that way, as opposed to the other direction. There's not really any video games where you're socially all trying to be nice to each other. That's just not as engaging.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, let's hold hands.
Yeah. So it's not quite the same. So the modeling that they're receiving online is through one specific set of people who do this, and parents allow and don't understand sometimes what's happening for their kids online and what they're experiencing or seeing. And so that in turn affects them.
And how much of this is the out of proportion panic to other things? So I think about like little ones, and I think it's a very natural thing. And oh my gosh, I'm probably going to get reamed for this, but it's natural for little boys to want to play sword or knife or gun or whatever, all with just their hand signals. And yes, we 100% agree that there are places and spaces where that just cannot happen. Like, it's just not going to happen. But I think there has been such a panic surrounding that to where we have like, if you're at home and you do that, we're having an entire meltdown and conversations and inserting guilt onto children, especially males, about that behavior when it's really natural. Generations and generations and generations and generations of men who actually didn't turn out all that bad, despite what we are hearing, um, have played in these types of ways.
Yeah, it's a rough play. I'm a huge proponent of it.
Yeah.
Boys need to do it.
Yeah.
It's plain and simple. And dads need to do it with their sons, and even to a certain extent too. Like there's all your kids in general.
Yeah.
Kids learning about their bodies, what the extent is. It's kind of like socially,
Yeah.
right? You want to know what you can or what you can or can't do physically to somebody else, what your own strength is,
Yes.
what they should do. You learn boundaries.
Uh-huh.
You learn safe play, and some rough play is fun. Like that's that thing, and that's also where I'd say you learn emotional regulation because when in those play fights. You're like, oh, they took it too far, or when I feel this way, I need to calm down.
Yeah.
I need to take a break. I need to play with someone my size, not someone bigger. All and that kind of teaches. Now, if you take that away, and you're online, you're taking out whatever aggression or whatever fun you think, and you're only hearing grown men berate you or disrespect you, and you learn to do the same thing. Now, when something physical happens, and maybe you get hurt because you're playing with some other kid who doesn't exist the way you do, you're going to take out all your emotions in an extremely inappropriate, negative way, and you will get ostracized. And you know where you will go when you get ostracized? You will go play video games. Because you don't want to deal with any of the social...
cycle.
Yeah, it's a cycle.
Okay.
And so you really do need to get out there. The kids need to be in sports. They need to be doing some type of activity.
I am like, I just really want to bring the competitiveness back to sports. I think it's so important, and appropriate competitiveness, not aggression, not anything inappropriate, but there is such a thing as some good competitiveness and some pushing and moving around and understanding your body and getting physical with other people. Like that's actually okay.
And I would like to say that there's one movement that I've been super happy to be. I have girls and I put them in it for about a year. Is the mixed martial arts movement.
Yeah, 100%.
I put them in it. Their confidence skyrocketed, especially all kids should be doing it.
100%.
But the fear it takes out of being able to be put in a chokehold or take a kick or a punch, and it's not out of anything malicious, but just learning your body and being comfortable with somebody else, of people of all sizes. And knowing that it's fair play, it's structured violence, I call it, right? It's fair, and everybody's agreeing to it. It takes away, and I see people who had trauma before, when they do it, it's almost better than therapy sometimes, because the exposure part of like, oh, this is okay, and everyone's happy. In fact, I made some of the best friends who that guy choked me out yesterday. We went and had dinner. It was a good, he's a good dude. Like there's this aspect of it that I'm a big proponent of.
I 100% agree.
Wonderful.
Okay, so we've done a little bit about the red pill movement. We looked a little bit at video, and now how substance use kind of comes into an issue for men in mental health. And, full disclosure, Daniel is a licensed chemical dependency counselor. So this is speaking from a very knowledgeable point of view.
So video game addiction is one, I would say, that has replaced in some ways. I don't put this out there as black and white, but there are people who maybe would have done drugs and are now doing alcohol, and people who do alcohol, doing drugs, are now playing video games.
Yeah.
The addiction,
it's a swap.
Right. So the substance has just become digital addiction, right?
Yes.
And so that's become more of the acceptable part of addiction in society, because everybody has some type of screen addiction at some point. Everybody can look at their phones and see how long, right? There's that aspect of it. And for men, the substance,
like food,
right? Food addiction, right? And so certain things have just become more acceptable. Like we say, we have Twitch TV, we have e-games, we have dedicated channels now to video games. So that's its own substance, I would call it. It's just a digital one. And then you have higher rates of alcoholism as you get older. The hustle culture has a lot to do with constant working. If you're not doing self-care, you're going to be addicted to something. You need something to, people are using it to cope, and then other people are using it in different ways to not deal with trauma, right? There's masking,
avoidance,
right? Avoiding everything. And for men, the culture kind of, say the culture, but I think society as a whole kind of cares a lot less about what happens to men in an addiction.
100%. Well, I think it's normalized. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but the thing I keep thinking about is it's Friday. I'm coming home. I'm gonna get a beer. Like I'm gonna be, I'm kind of the recliner dad who's like got the beer. I've got a good job. I'm providing for my family completely. Like I get to do this, like kind of like this is how I unwind. And it becomes like the acceptance of the family that like dad comes home, and does he get belligerent drunk? Maybe not, but is he definitely overusing? Yes.
It turns into happy hours, turn into happy days, Mondays, Tuesdays, right? Some for some people, and then other times, if you have, I'll say this, if you have your business taken care of and you're drinking, you're less likely to use it as a coping mechanism for when you're not taking care of your business and you're drinking. That turns into a different substance use, right? And so for a lot of men, it's just really has been the norm to go and just, take a drink. It'll help you. Don't deal with your emotions sometimes and take a drink. That's that too.
Well, had a hard day at work. What am I doing? I'm going to go and have a drink.
Right.
Instead of talk to my wife or whatever. And so like, let's talk about that. Why would I go have a drink instead of talk to, even if it was like my good buddy, not my wife.
Sure.
Okay.
They're two different topics, but the same topic.
Yeah.
Right. So I would say on the wife one, right, you're in a marriage and you're like, you know what, maybe there's a issue there with communication or emotional support there at home between you and your wife, or things are not good. And so a man might just go to a place where everybody knows his name, right? That type of thing.
Or no one knows his name. Like I feel like that could be like gosh, I don't have anything here. No one wants anything from me. I just get to like tap into relief.
Right. Again, it's so this, I guess, it overlaps in the subject, because you could have somebody who's like, you know what, I just need a home away from home. And other time you're just like, I want to be random. It's like a vacation. I want to be away from things. And so either one of those things is, there's not really too many settings. Now it's become more common, like I said, MMA gyms, places like that, where that has become a thing where a lot of men let's say in recovery, have found groups or buddies who hold each other accountable in different ways, right? Because that's what people who use substances need accountability,
100%,
with not just from themselves, from other people. Like that's that setting. And so that's one of those hard things to deal with as a man, when you're like, I don't really have anything else, but there's always a bottle. That's kind of how it's been.
Well, and I think we have to talk about this carefully, because I think that so many people think substance use means the person who can't go to work, the person who has to go to the 12-step program, the person that's been in and out of rehab, that person. And really what we're talking about, especially with mental health, is the person who has to have a drink to relax. The person who can't have conversation until I'm 2 or 3 drinks in. And maybe it doesn't mean that I'm, having the whole bottle, but I need it to socialize. And I would say there's more of so much of that going on regarding men right now.
I think the functional alcoholism, that's more prevalent in society than the full-blown
100%.
guy that's sitting out in front of the bar passed out. That's way less prevalent. Those are,
two different things.
Very different. And so when you have the person who needs to wake up in the morning, people call it, with weed, they call it wake and bake, right? And that's been, accepted societally. Different subject, but that's one of those things that people will wake up and drink or they need to just maintain, or they're going to keep a buzz going,
Yeah.
and they end up spending $200 a week on alcohol just to maintain something so that everybody else can see the mask that everything is okay.
Yeah.
And it's not.
So if I had to ask you what's behind all this, the red pill video substance, one thing that I keep hearing is the isolation, right? That I can, I don't have to be responsible for my own shortcomings. I can blame someone else. I can avoid and I can isolate. Now, if we were looking at that diagnostically, what would we say some of that might be?
Depression would be number one. Anxiety would be right up there.
Yeah.
And being a man today is so much different than even just 10 to 20 years ago. It's just different.
How so?
Socially, you have more connection than ever, and at the same time, you are more secluded and disconnected. Again, talking to someone in person is way different. Just like I'm sure you listening now, you just hear our voices, right? It's different if we were in the room together having this conversation. It's just this. It's significant. And so for men, where you would have these connections going outside, playing sports, being with other people, right? At the same, like you said, the top of the podcast, there are all these kinds of resources available. And at the same time, there's more things disconnecting us. So now if all these resources were available, let's say 20, 30 years ago, I think it would be a very different situation for men who are still participating in sports, being outdoors, having some kind of going outside, touching grass connection along with those resources. But I think because it just kind of coincides with now, it's a rougher spot. And as far as acceptance too, that's where it's been difficult.
What do you feel are the pressures that men are feeling in today's society? Pressure to be what? Be who? Act how?
Yeah. So if we could move, red pill movement, you could say, is part of a representation of the hyper masculine, hyper successful, you could say sexy, financially stable or rich, wealthy. Why those things specifically, and like why strong? Okay. Because, well, it starts when you're a teenager and you need guidance. And you cannot, if kids are getting it less and less from coaches or at church or other things, right? So they get it online. Well, those things get you, I put it in quotes, a girlfriend. They get you, prospectively, they could get you a female. They could get you a house. They could get you status. They could get you all of these things. So being that hyper masculinized version of it in some ways is, technically you can be successful following this, but you're not going to be completely whole as a person. It's very different, which that kind of subtlety gets lost on the younger generation specifically.
So if we were saying then potentially depression, anxiety, those types of things are coming into play as well as like societal pressures, what advice could you give to men that maybe are never going to come into a counselor's office, that are never going to, which we are not necessarily medication pushers, but never going to take any type of medication, never going to tell anyone around them that they're, struggling? What is the advice here? Because honestly, I think this is the missing piece, is like, we're not giving enough quote unquote free information for them to see that like these couple of steps made them feel better. And maybe that would be the thing that would help them to go the next step, right? Like we talk about all this stuff, and this again goes back to, this is what's wrong with men, as opposed, but we don't give them like real next steps.
And a lot of this is this is my own personal view on what this would be. But for so many men, I say, if you're never going to go to a counselor, I always think of what do you get from therapy? What is something that So people look to self-help books and on all of that. Like sometimes they can be helpful in guidance and they have helped people. So if that's a direction you want to take and you feel like you could do something like that, I would say that direction's better than the red pill movement or
Okay, let's give them a book. What's something that they could
I would say
look
the
into?
Jordan Peterson book, specifically the 10 rules for life.
10 rules for life.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the first rule in there is make your bed. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to go through all the rules, but
Yeah.
the idea that when you wake up in the morning, you need to have some type of accountability to yourself, some kind of correction, some type of, planning your day, number one, planning your week, really setting out and making a plan. It's the self-authoring suite by Jordan Peterson too. Self-authoring suite. He has a website dedicated to how you want your life to go, how you would really like it to be. And that's going to change over time.
Yeah.
If you're 18 versus 40,
or if it's not changing over time, we may have a problem.
Right. Recognizing it, the self-awareness aspect. I would say men, and I would say, you know what, if you want some advice for ladies, being more self-aware in a lot of, in those aspects and not blaming others for everything, taking ultimate accountability for who you are, that really is the best place to be, because then you could actually direct yourself to where you want to be. And after you find out what you're missing in your life, what you need, and what you want, then you can take baby steps to do those things. There's so much online that is actually really good if you're just one of those guys who lives on the internet. Let's say Jordan Peterson being one of them. I know people like to follow these other guys like Tate and stuff like that, but to a more realistic route on really internalizing or self-reflecting in whatever you got going on, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. So I like the book Extreme Ownership for Men. I think that's a really great book. And then if you're struggling with habits and understanding that, there's a great book by James Clear called Atomic Habits that helps you to know how to do this thing called habit stacking. So it's like, okay, I do this one thing already every single day, which is like eat breakfast. And what's the thing I'm going to stack with it? What is something that I have been wanting to do, big or small, that I could stack with it, that is reasonable and that I could actually do with some consistency? I think the most important thing is to be consistent and recognize that not every self-help book is going to be for you. I don't think self-help books are the, best way to go, but I think being open to hearing lots of points of view. Yeah. And so if you're listening to the same few podcasts every single week, you probably need to expand your horizons and listen to something that is total counter to some of your belief systems, just to, keep yourself in check and keep yourself in balance and understand other people's points of view, because I think that we can get into our own little echo chambers. Yeah. And so I think that that's really important. That's one thing. What else could they do?
And so the other thing I'd say, just a general rule for living. If you ever feel you're very comfortable in life, get uncomfortable.
Yes.
That's part of that, not being in the echo chamber. Mm-hmm. Go listen to another side, and hopefully if they're not, they'll be welcoming, right? If you just really want to get the information, go be exposed. College offers that, or used to, I would say, for a lot of colleges will offer you varying experiences. Yeah. In different classes and cultures, and travel does that to people naturally. Yeah. Right. So leaving your city, leaving your state, go do those things that open your mind and expand who you are. I always say this, you can always come back to who you are right now. Yeah. You can, but you're not likely to once you do these things. Yeah. You're likely to have it be a more complete person in a lot of ways and have more empathy. And more empathy leads to having a better understanding of people, and your relationships will improve. And people will like you more, especially if you're more self-reflective.
100%. And I think another thing is you should have some adversity in your life, like you said, getting uncomfortable. And it doesn't necessarily, for some people, it gets to be travel, and for some people it gets to be going to college and doing these other things. And you know what? But for some people, it is getting in the gym and
Mhm.
staying on the treadmill longer than you thought you
Yeah.
were going to. For some of you, it's getting outside and taking a walk for longer than you thought you could.
Right.
These different types of things are challenging yourself. You're challenging how far you think you can go. And what is happening is you're overcoming and you're becoming, I guess you're kind of writing a script that you are an overcomer,
Right.
right? And so it's opportunities like that. If you're in a job that you hate, which is something I see in men over and
Yeah.
over and over again, if I'm just being really honest, um, and they feel like they can't transition because maybe by their late 30s, their 40s, their 50s, like they are now the SME. They're the subject matter expert. They're making the money they always wanted to make. They have a family that relies on them. So they feel kind of trapped in
Yeah.
that. And I think, like, be creative. Think about what it is that you really want and how you can transition skills, because I think sometimes you just feel like there's no other place that's going to give you what this place is giving
Mhm.
you. And I think that that is such a mindset that is not helpful, right?
Yeah.
Because we should have an abundance mindset. There's an abundance of amazing jobs out there for us. There's an abundance of opportunities.
Mhm.
We just have to be willing to see them. But if we have decided that this is the only way and this is the only job that's going to provide this for me, well, then it will be. That's that self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. I think you're touching on the identity part of this. If you're telling whatever you tell yourself that you are, like, oh, I can't do this because I'm this, right?
Yeah.
Not just like I like this place. That's different. Like, oh, actually, I like my job, enjoy it. Okay, great. You don't need to change too much about that. But if you're telling yourself I have to be this, then that's what you'll keep doing.
Yeah.
You'll never change. You'll never change for your own betterment.
Yeah.
So if you're telling yourself what's your narrative about who you are, or
Yeah.
maybe somebody else is in your head and their narrative, maybe it's mom or dad, or your
Mhm.
wife, your husband, whatever it is. If maybe their narrative is kind of ruling you,
Yeah.
once you recognize again that self-reflection of like, oh, that's what I think about myself and who I want to be, then you can move on from there.
Yeah.
You can pick that direction.
Yeah. And I think some of what leads to some of this dopamine chasing is that there's a great study on this, and I wish I had it up, but it talks about how, like, if you do these things, certain things, let's just say sex with a partner you've never had sex
Mhm.
with before, like the dopamine, the anticipatory dopamine would be like, I don't know how they measure it, but 400, whatever,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Let's just say we're measuring it like liquid. Ounces of
Sure.
dopamine would pour into your
Right.
body. Okay. And maybe now that's your sex partner the next few times, right? But after being with that same sex partner for 20 years, the anticipatory dopamine is no longer 400.
That's right.
We might be at 200. And it doesn't mean that you do not still find that person attractive. It doesn't mean any of these things. It's just the reality of life. And I think that sometimes men can get caught up in some of the new things that they're getting exposed to and the feeling of dopamine that is flushing over them.
Right.
And now this thing is just not that interesting anymore.
Yeah, and I think that aspect of, let's say you are able, as a man, to date multiple women or have that, and some men want to stay that for their 20s, 30s, 40s, right? And they don't see the appeal of either having a long-term relationship or the emotional support
Yeah.
that it offers, the benefits of having a kid or a wife or something
Yeah.
stable, right? And that can be really isolating in itself for a lot of men.
Yeah.
It's really lonely and they don't really understand it, but eventually it does lose its draw and you've wasted decades
Yeah.
on chasing women or chasing whatever the thing is. In this instance, yeah, women, it could be anything else. Like if you're chasing the money or you're chasing whatever,
Yeah.
right? So the fulfillment and the all around aspect of being a man is really important.
100%. So is masculinity toxic?
Is it toxic? Inherently, no.
Right.
And I would I think you have a point on this. I like to hear, but yeah, I don't like the term toxic masculinity because I think
Yeah.
it besides the point, and the talking point isn't necessarily about masculinity.
No, it's not. And I told you this. I just really have a hard time the if we're not going to call the other end of this toxic, if there's no such thing as toxic feminim, can I get that out?
One more
Say it
time.
for me.
Toxic femininity.
You got it. If that is not part of the conversation, then how can toxic masculinity be part of the conversation? And these two things are actually precious, amazing, beautiful things, masculinity and femininity. And we need to protect that as much as possible and recognize that there are bad actors on both sides of these, because people are living in extremes right now. And how I look at that is there are bad men, bad people with bad ideas on the masculine side of this that we're kind of labeling as toxic, and there are just as many bad women on with bad ideas and and kind of creating their own narrative just as much. And so we need to just like have an honest conversation. I don't know, I think about what was that was it 80s show is like, you can't have one without the
Love and Marriage. Yeah. Al Bundy. That's right.
Yeah. And so I kind of just like live in that place of like, okay, if we're gonna call one side, we got to call balls and strikes all the time. And I think that is really important, especially in this time where everything's so divided, that we have to be willing to call balls and strikes. And I don't know. So you're saying that masculinity inherently is a good thing and a positive thing. Interestingly enough, and I want to talk to you about this, and we'll talk about it next time because we're running out of time, but there is a great book that's out right now, and it's I think it's called, I want to get the title right, Men Without Work. Yeah, Men Without Work. And I've been looking into it because I wanted to know more about like what's going on with men and what's leading to this. And there is a tremendous increase in able-bodied young men who are not in the workforce. And I don't know, but just talking to men, I think so much of a man's identity is wrapped in like his purpose, his job, those types of things. And when you take that piece away from them, not or they choose not to pursue it, like what's the empty spot there?
Yeah, I mean, they said it. It's part of your identity is gone. A lot of men don't have this motive right now to go out and be a part of a society. I mean, if you're out in a part of society and you don't feel like you fit in, or you feel you're in your own echo chamber and you're hearing you're toxic because you exist. I mean, it's going to be difficult for you to possibly find a reason to go out and do something if you're not like, okay, well, what am I going to work for if I can't get these things that I want? And I would speak right back to, okay, well, these men might be addicted or have had depression, anxiety, all the practices that they need to have to succeed are not there.
Yeah. And how much do you think it affects the way that we view men? Because the slant has been relatively negative, if we're really honest, as opposed to women, like women in mental health. Not that they're showing it every day, but whenever they show up, you can see the emotion, you can see the hurt, you can see the, and then when you have like the stone face, flat affect, stoic man, do we have as much empathy for that?
Absolutely not. I would say no. I'd say as a society, that's not really a thing. I think people who are more expressive in general get more sympathy. And men as a whole, if they're not expressing it the way, let's say, we as a society need to see it, then we don't necessarily care as much
Yeah.
It's not as dramatic, therefore it's not probably not as serious, even
Yeah.
though men just express it differently than women. But
And that they complete suicide at a higher rate than
yeah,
right.
men violently kill themselves.
Violent. Yeah.
Violently, and they are more successful.
I think I saw that it was like up to date today's suicide ratings was like 445,000. I wish I could find it. I saw the 2025 so much, but if that stat was true, we're on record to be have a higher rate of suicide from last year. Because it's like 445 is what I saw, 445,000. Yeah. So that to me is an important stat to be thinking about.
And if anybody's listening who is interested in trends to see like, okay, well, where are we going to be in 10 years or whatever? I look at Japan. Mm-hmm. There's a crisis in Japan right now where they're actually incentivizing through law or through a bill to give people money for having a kid, because I think in the next 10 years, they're set to have an older population over 60 than they are under 20. It's wild over there. Men and women are not pairing up.
Well, and that's happening here now.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, it is a real. Yeah. And I know this is men's mental health. And what I've seen is men, some men, not all, some men wildly abusing that, right? And so because there are a large amount of women who are in the market wanting to make a match, right? They are dating 3 and 4 and 5 women at the same time. And it just is not leading to great results, because now the women are shutting down completely and don't really want to have a relationship.
So men and women are not seeing the best versions of each other in this marketplace, the dating marketplace, which that's the whole another episode, but this all overlaps.
Yeah, but it really does.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to date as a man for male reasons and female reasons, and vice versa. It's hard for females to date for male reasons and female reasons. The whole aspect of dating is a whole nother episode we could do with the advent of online dating and apps and the shallowness of it, and Instagram and porn addiction on men's side and OnlyFans on women's side. Like that's a whole other thing.
Well, and porn addiction on women's side, I saw a stat on, I think it was like Defend Your Mind, that was like 36% of women are now using pornography, and the reason they're using it is because they're lonely. Right. So, I mean, there's some staggering stats out there regarding just the state of where we are in general. So I think this, last thing, I want to make sure that we gave them some books, some self-help type things. We gave them an idea about pursuing a passion that gives them some discipline, but also gives them some planned adversity with like the MMA type of dynamic. What's one other thing that you think could be beneficial I think men need male friends that they go do male things with, that, they need that. Yeah. It's so important.
Yeah. And I'll say that as a guy who's traditional, like in this field, there's a lot of women in the field. So
no, you don't say.
Right. And so in counseling, that's in psychology counseling, it's a lot, but it's invaluable whenever I can meet a guy and we could just get along and have friends and go do stuff away from women.
Chill.
Chill. And it's not sexist. You could call it whatever it is.
Yeah.
You need male bonding time, just like women need female bonding time.
I mean, no one would say that on the opposite end. That's what right. I mean. The whole girls' trip is a movement, like, mommy day out, whatever it is. But like, if you hear the other end, it's
right. And right. So that the ostracization in that angle, that's another part of the angle that men, they're toxic because they want to be around each other and not women. Like, and the other end, if you're like, a guy who only wants to be all around women, you could call him toxic too for other reasons.
Yes.
Men can't win.
Yes.
Right. That's that type of thing. So I say men, one thing is to get offline if you can.
Yes.
Get offline. The sooner you get offline, get outside, and you find some dudes to hang with who are like-minded in that way, who are at least there, you're gonna have a better time. Your life is gonna be fulfilled like you've never known it. And I think it's,
and don't go to the bar all the time.
Yeah,
go fishing, go hunting, go
a bar thing. Yeah, don't make that your pastime.
Yes.
Because soon it will take up all your time, your money, your relationships. That's what will happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, go do things. Go find activities. Again, like I said earlier, go be open to things that you've never done before. Go try it 3 times. Once to get that experience out of you. Twice to see. 3 to see if you might be kind of good at it or you might like it. But I do the same thing. Watch your health, right? If you have some health things, if you're making excuses for yourself because you're like, oh, I have this thing going on with me and I don't want to go because, okay, well, find something that does work. Go see a doctor about your thing. If it's like a back problem or whatever, go take care of that. You're worth it. You're worth going out to have a good life.
I 100% agree with that. I think more men who will refuse to go to the doctor and sit in 6 weeks of my shoulder hurts.
If there's any type of toxic masculinity, if there was anything that stereotype that would hurt a man, it's his own ego in that way specifically, because that's the stereotype that has remained true apparently since the beginning of time, because it's old books that would talk about it. But really taking care of yourself in that way allows you to maximize your life. It just does.
Yeah. And not all stereotypes. I think it's funny because I think stereotypes have been just like, oh my gosh, that's not okay. But, some exist for a reason. Let's call it out. Let's talk about it and let's recognize it and let's challenge people with it instead of making it like this thing that we can't even say.
Right. Yeah. It's one of my favorite terms is leveling up. Like I said to men, and that resonates with the men I've talked to of, there's little goals that you can do to achieve, right? And so what's your baseline is taken care of, whether it be your health, your mental health, your physical and mental health. You can pretty much do whatever you want in this world. You really can. And so take care of those things first. Make sure you're stable financially and go live your life any which way you want. Like you really can have the life that you want and deserve to. And just go out there and stay away from all the negative aspects of the internet and all of that, because the real world isn't actually as harsh as that. If you go around and talk to people, you're going to run into so much more negativity online than you ever will just walking around. You're actually going to see smiles if you smile. You're going to get a girl's phone number, or they're going to ask for yours. If you're walking out there, you're dressed well because you took care of yourself. You feel good about yourself. You feel confident because everything's taken care of.
Yeah.
You'll never get that most of the time online, unless you're a celebrity. But even then, that's fake. That's a different thing. So don't live up to what you see other men doing who have status and other things. Live your own, and you will find your own way.
Yeah. Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's our episode for today. Oh, I didn't even get to ask you what's on your feed. That's the question of the day.
It's funny you asked. So I have, let's see. I have basketball, NBA stuff. Finals are going on right now.
Yes. Who are you for?
I know. Right now I'm for the Pacers. Right. I like both teams, but I'm for the Pacers winning because they haven't. Essentially.
Yeah.
Neither has Oklahoma, but I think that the Pacers they're kind of on a weird trajectory because they've been down 15 points at some point in every series and have come back to win it off of, I think it's Halliburton's game winner. Every series he's had one. It's incredible. I think that's a Cinderella story. So
awesome.
I got NBA in my feed.
Nice.
I have some music I have Drumeo, which is it's a music thing where drummers come and hear songs they've never heard before, and then they try to guess what the track is and play it on the drums. It's really cool.
Cool.
I have some basic news stuff.
Nice. Okay. So on my feed today, that's dominating my feed is something we've already talked about. The Women's College World Series is still happening, and we're in game 3 now. And again, it's an interstate rivalry that's happening, Texas versus Texas Tech. And you already know where my allegiance is to. So wreck 'em, and we'll see you tomorrow.